technology in companies like HP, Volvo, Thomson Reuters, companies you've heard of. And then after selling that company, she started Verbal Transactions. And Verbal Transactions is a software product for call centers and helps call centers to train up new call center employees and get them trained quickly, or understand, I guess, just as quickly if they perhaps are not going to be successful in that role. So it's very interesting stuff. So welcome, Nancy Munro, and I'll let you take it from here.
Lori. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for coming on such a lovely day. You know, you could be sitting on your patio with a nice, refreshing drink right now, but you're here, so this is great. I'm gonna make sure it's worth your time. So as Lori said, I've been in the technology space for about 28 years, and I really got into voice-based technology back in 2003. And this was way back when IVRs were just coming in the cloud, interactive voice response systems. And I decided I need to create a way that people can actually practice conversations. And that took me down this whole path of audio training. And I started podcasting back then, way before it was very popular. So that's very popular right now, which is great. And I love that. But let me first define what is a podcast. So podcasting is audio only content. If it's video, it's a VOD. So audio only content that is subscribed to. So it has to have RSS tags associated with it so that it properly, to get a little geeky here, meta tags the data. So if you just have streaming audio content that is not subscribable, that is not a podcast. So I'm going to be a very purist when it comes to the definition of what a podcast is. The slides that I'm showing you, if you do want a copy of the slides, just my email address will be on the last slide. Okay, good, perfect. So that being said, so I'm going to go into first kind of talking about what are different podcast styles. So how many of you, obviously, see a show of hands, how many of you listen to podcasts? Great, you're my peeps. Okay, I would say my favorite podcasts out there tend to be more entertainment and educational based. Radio Lab, O'Brien's podcast is the one that makes me laugh out loud. So if you haven't listened to his podcast, it's hilarious. Alec Baldwin, all different styles of podcasting that's out there today. So as you think about how to use a podcast, either for your business, for your school, for your group, from a social standpoint, if you want to become the next, popular, podcast, personality out there, think about the style that you wanted to design. So it's like producing a movie, So the most easy one to do is a single voice, just you talking, maybe with what I call bookends, where you have a music intro and music exit. That's the most simplest version of podcasting that I've seen out there today. Probably the most popular is the interview format. And again, I'm going to get into how to create interview content very easily. And I'm all about free. So almost everything I'm going to show you is 100% free besides your time. I'm also going to talk about a quiz show style. So if you're in the education space, you can actually use podcast content for people actively engaged in the listening. If you're just listening, that's kind of a passive form of learning. But if you actually start to ask people questions inside content that you're asking them and ask them to kind of respond to that in some other, just on paper or whatever, that gets them actively involved in participating in that content. Radio shows, a lot of radio shows are rebroadcast as podcasts out there. So think about, what do they do on a radio show? They have people call in. So maybe break it down by section. So you can have, say, hey, we got an email from somebody, one of our listeners today, and I'm going to answer their question. We're going to have a caller come in and you're going to record that asking questions. So think about the content and how you can maybe break it up into sections so that it keeps that listener engaged, because they know, oh, I'm going to wait for that, the question come in, or when the caller comes in. And you can actually stage that. I mean, you think about radio shows today when people are, those aren't just spontaneous phone calls. I mean, most of them are staged or prepped ahead of time. We'd like to think they're spontaneous, but most of them are staged. So you could set that up, have people emailing you that want to be somebody that comes on the show to ask a question. Well, you probably want to make sure you know what they're asking and that you've vetted them out. And then another tip would be have a giveaway. The book that you've written, if you have a guest on your show, is it a book they've written? Have people submit things on social media to get their name in for the drawing. Don't giveaway out to the very end. So that's a way of capturing your audience till they're completely done listening to the podcast. You can ensure that they stay into the content as long as possible. So a couple more tips before I go into this, the how-to. Record several shows before you start posting. Because if you're doing a lot of work around getting people to listen to your podcast, and let's say you're going to post it once a week or once a month, and they're expecting it, because once they subscribe to it, it should automatically come into their podcasting, channel, whatever they're using, if it's iTunes or whatever it is. If you're doing an interview, it's really smart to create a template around their name, their bio, if they have anything they want you to promote, what questions do they feel comfortable asking you? So ask all these things ahead of time. So maybe a template for those people that you're going to use if you style of podcasting, because it makes sure that you kind of had a little rehearsal back and forth between them via the template. They know what you're going to be asking them. So there's not kind of dead air space that you have in that podcast as you're creating it. A lot of times I use my podcast as a teaser in an email to get them to click on listen to the show. So I'll just put something around the subject matter. Hey, click here to listen to the show. So that, again, it's a way to build the following of people that you have, because, if you're really good at using that teaser, you'll drive traffic to your website. When you're just starting out, I would say keep it under 30 minutes, maybe just 15 minutes. That way it's not a big commitment of your time until you get really good at it. It's not a big commitment of the people listening to it till they decide they like your content. So just play around with the timing, but I would not go over 30 minutes unless you start to get, lots of notoriety for this and you've got really great content and you're the expert out there. And then sponsorship, I wouldn't quit your day job. Not a lot of people make money full time by doing podcasting. There probably are a few out there. And those that are making money at it today, they first had to get that audience to follow them. So there is work involved in doing this. Maybe if you've got a very specialized topic and you can get a sponsor, great. But you're going to obviously have to promote them and make sure that they're mentioned in that podcast show. So again, just kind of tips to get you started for you to think about as you're architecting your content, how you're going to get your audience, how you're going to stylize the content, and all of those things. So there's lots. It's not just putting, recording something and putting it out there in the ethos. There's, definitely want to put some thought and planning into it. So the very first step is getting the content, recording that content. And so I've got 4 ways that I'm going to show you how to do that. There's probably a lot of other ways out there, but these are completely free for the most part. They're easy to do. You don't have to be super geeky to learn how to use these tools. In fact, we're quite hopefully dummy, but not. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Audacity. So how many of you already use Audacity out there? A few of you, okay. So it is an open source software. It's free. It is for both PCs and Macs. I know if you have a Mac, do not. You probably have GarageBand already on there, so you don't need to get an outside, third-party software. But Audacity works great. I'm going to jump into it in a little bit here. Another way to get content recorded is just through conference calls. A lot of conference call systems out there will record the call. So if you're doing an interview, I use freeconferencecall.com. It is 100% free. I've been using it for 10 years. So think about if you're going to be doing an interview, you don't need to have that person sitting in a studio. You don't need to have them come and make sure the mics, you got 2 mics going. Just use a simple conference call tool. You can use Zoom, WebEx, or whatever, if it's recording for you, as long as you can extract an MP3 file out of it. So Free Conference Call does it for free, and they let you download the MP3 file for nothing. So I'm going to jump to slides, and hopefully my screens continue to share as I go here. So I'm going to show you Audacity first. So it's pretty simple. It's video controls, just like you would on a videotape machine, or if you still know what those look like. And it's just a simple matter of, I'm going to record my voice, blah, 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 right? And I'm done. So what's nice about this is it has effects to fade in and fade out. So a lot of times if you just reverse engineer a podcast that you like, what's on the front end? There's probably an intro. There's probably some underlying music. there's maybe, you know, it's the same intro every time. So maybe you can record the same intro and just edit it to the new content. So there's lots of things and lots of techniques that you can manage within this tool. I'm not going to spend time on this, but I'll just show you how you can get pretty complex pretty fast. So this is like a 16 track, get my mouse to move, podcast. Oh, no. It's actually a quiz show that I made. I created a template so that the intro's the same. Each time I put in a new quiz question, I just swap out this track, record whatever content I have in there, and plunk. I can still use the quiz format with the game show host, but build in new questions each week that I submitted this out. So this is probably the highest number of tracks that I ever put into a podcast. So like I say, you can get very simple, just your voice recording it, all the way up to a multi-track type of production. So I'm not going to show you free conference call, but I am going to show you this little WebEx thing's getting in my way here. Let's see here. Blog Talk Radio. Does anybody use Blog Talk Radio? Okay. So it's really designed to be like an online web radio show. If you go to blogtalk.com, you'll see all kinds of content, all kinds of radio shows out there, and it's not managed by the FCC. So caution, there is some content that's probably not suited for children. And so I was using this a while back, and to get people to listen live is a lot of work, unless, again, you're very popular and you've got lots of people following you. But I thought, wait a minute. This is a really cool tool that I could use to create podcast content, because if my show is under 30 minutes, it's free. I can have guests dial in just by using a telephone, but I can have a pre-recorded intro created that I play every single time. And so I actually get a control panel. Let's see if I can move my window here. That lets me manage all of the content as I'm recording it live. So let me go to episodes here. And then I can download the MP3 for free. And then I may want to do some edits. Maybe somebody's, maybe they didn't answer a question correctly. And I'm going to go in and edit that in Audacity. So it's all coming back to Audacity. Okay. It's very slowly loading here. I'll go out to this site instead. So I'm going to play you a clip of my podcast show. What I do is I invite people that, because I'm still a startup with this company I started about a year ago. I'm still on the internet. Oh, because I'm sharing, it's really slow. So I reach out to people to be guests on my show who already have lots of followers. Maybe they're a consultant in their business, and I'm going to leverage their network, build my network. It's worked pretty well so far. So I'm going to just play you a clip of my podcast show created in Blog Talk.
Welcome to the Contact Center Expert. This show is hosted by Nancy Munro, CEO of Transactions, a voice enablement technology company. Our discussion on how you can make your contact center a well-oiled machine.
Wait for it.
Well, welcome everybody. This is our first show of
I have a pre-recorded audience clapping for us. It's like, woo! So I pretend that we have a live studio audience in our show. The guests love it. It's fun. And so I just have all that preset into my Blog Talk Radio studio, which I can't get to because it's really slow right now. So just go to Blog Talk Radio. If your show's under, you can schedule it ahead of time. And then it gives you even stats of who actually, they can still listen to the content on Blog Talk. I don't really promote it that way, but it's still sitting there. I can always delete it if I want to. But it's another way to cross-promote my business, cross-promote the guests that I have on. So you can have lots of fun with it, like I did. But again, you can download the audio content, and then I turn that into a podcast. So sitting on Blog Talk is not considered a podcast because you can't subscribe to it. I'm going to, okay, so those are, let me make sure I got all the, oh, one more way to create content. If you have a WordPress website created in WordPress, okay? So again, WordPress, the blogging version of WordPress is free. Website, you do have to pay to host that website somewhere. But Amazon, AWS, has now kind of this AI grouping of products, and they have something called Polly. So Polly is speech to or text to speech voice application, and it is a free plugin to WordPress. So let's say people say, "Oh, I hate the sound of my voice. I don't want to record my voice. I hate how I sound." Everybody says that until you record stuff of hours like I have. So what they've done is they've actually let you plug in a this Polly plugin, and you can pick the voices that you want. I have different styles. I have male and female voices. And only for the blog functionality of your WordPress site, it can automatically turn your content, your written content, into a podcast. So this is one of my blog posts, and I'm just
Human learning with AI. Many of you are familiar with the term machine learning, which is a subset of AI designed to train a machine how to do a very specific task. Can't we do the same process with humans? The answer is yes, of course we can. I want to highlight some examples that.
So you can choose which posts you want that voice turned on and off for. But I think it's great. I mean, she sounds great. Better than Google Voice, sorry. Siri. Sorry. I was showing this at an Amazon conference, and somebody did make the point in the audience that if your post got really popular, it's going to get very expensive, because there's a minimal cost for playing that voice or letting that voice play for you. But I'm not worried about it right now, because I might get 10 people on my website in a day if I'm lucky. So, but it's another way for you to create content. This is already automatically turned into an RSS feed. So it cut one of the other steps out. So before I move into how to creating the RSS and the actual podcast, are there any questions on the creation of the content? Nope. Okay. One question. Okay. Yes.
Is this a drop the mic moment?
Here you go. Trade.
Let's try this one.
All right. There. Ooh, you should record podcasts.
Okay. With the Audacity software, you're actually able to lay music underneath your words.
Mm-hmm. Let me let's see. Let's try this one.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our product trivia game. I hope you have your thinking caps on, because today's challenge will be a tough one. Be sure to write down your answers as you go along. We'll reveal the correct responses at the end. So, without further ado, let's get to our first question.
So there's the music track, and now then I'm going to read it. There's another music track. See? PDF.
This is Wink Winkleman again. I hope that first question didn't throw you off already. Okay, moving right along to question.
Yes.
Oh, so the question that I have, then I'm looking at this little snippet of audio.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to take 45, let's say, on the grid on the top, it would play while the words are. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool.
Oh, yeah. You can also, it's called amplify, but it can also reduce the sound level. So I can set so that it goes softer. So that the voice is more important than the music, right? So you want to make sure the music's playing soft, the voice. And so not shrunk it down. So it's going to play it way soft.
software package. Number 1, you now have the ability.
Stuff the music. That's my voice. So yeah, so you can change the levels of the volume to the music. Do a fade in and a too.
Sweet.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. This is like my go-to. It's free. Now, the one thing about Audacity, you do, when you get to the site, and if you're downloading it for the first time, you need something called the LAM encoder, LAM encoder. That allows you to export MP3 files. It doesn't automatically do that. You have to, and again, this software is free, but you just have to add this other little, I think it's a licensing thing to do with MP3 format in there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. I haven't used it much.
Radio only export
MP3. Other questions? Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the secret sauce. See if I'm still sharing. Not that. Not that. Okay, the RSS. This is the hardest part that took me forever to figure out how to do. Way back when I was, there was a company called FeedBurner. FeedBurner was based here in Chicago. They got bought by a little company called Google. And so FeedBurner was kind of a more geeky way of getting your RSS created, but it worked really, really well. And then they got bought, things changed, things happened. I kind of walked away from podcasting for a while, but then I thought, okay, let's get back into this. There are lots of ways to get an RSS feed, but to me, the easiest way to do that is something called HipCast, HIPCAST, up there on the screen, because it'll let you manage your content. It automatically will push it out into iTunes after you get it initially set up. So I'm actually going to walk through, and watch my timer, walk through the steps of how to take the content you created in Audacity or Blog Talk, or conference call, and did all your magic to it. It's still not a podcast. This might be great content, but it's still not a podcast. So HipCast costs $4.95 a month. So I thought it was worth the investment. Let's see if I'm still logged in here. Probably not, but we'll see. Oh, good. Okay. So the very first time you create a podcast, you have to set up these meta tagging things, right? You have to tell what your content's about, a little bit about you. So I'm going to just from scratch start a new podcast. So I'm logged in. I just go to podcast, new podcast. Right? You're right. It says I'm sharing. Okay. Let me stop sharing. Screen 2. Okay. All right. Not yet. Nope. Hold on. Did I get kicked off the whole thing? Yeah, I'm not even on. So see me, Dave, on the WebEx? Oh, join. I kicked out. Oh, I think it kicked me off. Okay. Well, that's what I'm trying to share. Yeah. There we go. I got it. Okay. Jeez. Okay. Share my screen. Okay. I don't want that again. Okay. Okay. Right. So, so I'm in Hipcast. I went to my list, new podcast. I'm just going to call it test, title, test. So everything that has an asterisk, you got to put something in there. Just follow the guide. Now it lets you pick a genre that you're podcasting, what language. You can decide how many shows or posts you want to show all at the same time when it's displayed in, say, iTunes. You can pick your logo. It could be your face, whatever image you want to show up next to the podcast. You put that in there. You can put a default title and a description. So this isn't a description of that particular show, that episode. It's a description of, in general, what does this show cover? Call center executive discussions. So whatever that might be. You can put your website URL in there, a copyright notice if you certainly want to make sure it's extra protected. Hit yes, syndicate my podcast, and yes, enable media RSS 2.0, and hit save. So now, still not a podcast yet. It's getting very, very close. So this is creating the shell. All of your content will sit inside. So it's properly meta tagged. It has a proper format so that I can now go into my iTunes setting. It's probably the most popular distributor of podcasting content. And then you want to make sure you click on activate. You don't want to block it from iTunes. And then again, anywhere there's an asterisk, put in a summary of your show, maybe a subtitle, your name, the author, all that. You can put keywords. People are searching by keywords. If it is explicit, you better make sure you check that box because iTunes will check for that. And then you can put additional categories in there and subcategories in there just to your to whatever that fits for your content, and hit save changes. So this is the shell, okay? And I don't have any content in here yet. So now let's say I've recorded my show. Remember, you only have to do this one time. So this setting up of the podcast is first time only. Once you get it set up, you can just add your content and it automatically ties it into that RSS feed. So now I'm going to go into my audio. I'm going to upload my show, whatever the name is, choose. So this is specific to that content now. This show is about X. So my guest on this show today was, so you put that entire description in there. And then you select which podcast you want to associate it with. I have multiple podcast shows all set up within this Hipcast tool. And that's another reason I like it. So I would just connect it to this test set and it would automatically push it into the shell of that podcast. So far, it's not sitting in iTunes or any RSS reader yet. So it's still kind of housed in Hipcast. So when I get ready to now say, okay, I've got my show, my RSS feed, how the heck do I get this into iTunes? So you go to your podcast list, which is here. And this whole thing, this string here, this is your RSS feed. So you're going to copy this whole thing. Copy, and then go into iTunes. So you have to be in the store. And you have to filter it to the podcast filter. And submit the podcast. It's very tiny. They keep changing it, what it looks like and where it's at. And then you click on this plus sign and paste your RSS feed in there. That's it. You don't have to do that one thing. I'm not going to save that. So here's all my podcasts from my current show. This is the URL for my show. It's active, so so as soon as you push that save button, iTunes is going to look at it. You're not going to be instantly famous on iTunes the minute you hit save. They are going to sniff it out, and even when I put new content in there, it takes 24 to 48 hours to actually show up inside or iTunes. I don't really use any of the other. I mean, there's lots of readers out there that I have slides on where you can distribute it. This just happens to be the most popular one. And I quite frankly use it to drive traffic to the website as well. So that's my purpose for building podcast content. So the next time that you anything. You just automatically add audio. You don't have to touch iTunes ever again. You don't have to touch that RSS feed ever again unless you're creating a new podcast. Yes.
A couple things. iTunes is going away, so unless you're doing this fairly soon, it's Apple Podcasts.
Right.
And
They're separating the video from the audio. Yeah.
so it may look a little bit different. The other thing is you may have to go back into there because Apple Podcasts is changing. They've announced what the new categories are, but they are having some new categories, eliminating old ones. So based on what you've done, you may have to tweak it later this year. What your categories are.
I can't imagine millions of hours of podcasting that's out there. They're going to make people go in.
They are.
Because it's Apple. So does that make sense? Those steps that I walked through today, is it clear to everybody that you first have to create the shell and the meta tagging, and that to be created first before you can add any kind of audio content? Good. Okay. I'm flying through here. Okay. Okay. So here's a list of different. iTunes goes away. You don't want to use iTunes. There's Cloud IVR. There's Stitcher. There's Libsyn, Blueberry, Podbean, Buzzsprout. Lots of others out there. How are you driving people to the podcast? You know, what's the whole purpose behind that? That would be, again, the thing for you to think through and strategize. Now, there's one other way that I have podcasting content. It's today you can't track how much somebody consumed. You can track how many listeners or downloads. You may not know, you're not going to know exactly who those people are unless you had them fill out a form first, then to get to your subscribe tab or whatever. So because I worked in the enterprise learning space, I said, well, gee, I kind of, if I'm pushing this out there as learning content, I got to know who listened to the content, or who, maybe I had a quiz at the end of it. I have to know, who these people are. So I've created the only way to track. Well, I didn't create the software. I created the channel and the pathway to do this. So this is a way to track how much somebody has consumed. And I'm using really old technology called IVRs, interactive voice response systems, that have been around forever. And you can track it because they're on the telephone. Use a telephone-based technology to push content to somebody. Yes? I'm going to jump out to the actual website. If I can. Okay. It's actually a company based in Chicago. They used to be called If by Phone. Now they're Dialogue Tech. I don't know if anybody uses them for anything, but so think about RoboDial, that's out there. You might get phone calls. That's an IVR pushing that content out. So you can preload a list of names and a list of phone numbers and push people. Well, chances are you see their phone ring, and if they don't know that's you pushing content out to them, they're not going to take a call. So, but because everybody's carrying this device around with them, why not give them easy access so I'm not subscribing to it. So I'm not calling it a podcast. I'm calling it phone podding, to kind of do a little play on words here. But it'll let you upload audio content to this If by Phone thing. And you can create a menu of podcasts or audio content for them to listen to. And then you can actually just send somebody an email with a link in the email that says, click here, put in your phone number, and we'll push the content directly to your phone so you can listen to it. So again, you wouldn't want to do it for very long chunks of time because somebody's not going to just sit there and listen to it on speakerphone forever. But you can actually track how much they consumed because you get a report that shows you from this timestamp, or a total of 15 minutes, they listened to that content. And because of the nature of IVRs today, they're getting more and more sophisticated. You can actually put questions on the end of that content and just let them answer with press 1 for this answer, 2 for this answer, 3 for this answer. So I'm actually giving a very similar talk to the legal education group on Monday in the city. And if they're doing a continuing education program and its content, it has to be tracked. So this would be another way and another vehicle for them to do that because it's portable. Everybody has this on their phone. Why not use it? I'm going to actually show you a sample of that. Let's see. I'm going to see how my, I'm going to plug in my phone. This works. So here I just have a little test page website. It says click here to enter your phone number. Make sure my volume's turned up. Oh, you can't hear it.
Select the podcast you wish to listen to. 1 for diabetic crisis. For living with the NC. Welcome to the phone potting. Please select the podcast you wish to listen
So
to.
you can just press the number and it's going to jump to that chunk of audio content. So I'll be able to track. Stop. So think about that today. Everybody's carrying this around. You get an email. Oh, click here, and then put in your phone number and ring. How 2 steps away, you're getting people to listen to your content. You're going to know which phone number it is, and if you have that phone number associated with a list of people already preloaded into your system, you're going to know exactly who that person is. So use this with Case New Holland. So Case New Holland's big manufacturer. They farm equipment, construction equipment, and they wanted to send out selling tips or product tips to their distributors once a month. And so this guy really got hooked on it. He started out with 500 distributors, and he told them, if your caller ID says 262 something something something, that's me. That's the content that you're going to listen to. So by the time they were done with that particular project, they had over 3,000 dealers all over the country listening to his content. And he got to be kind of this famous person when he'd show up at conferences and stuff. They're like, you're the guy that gets the content. So, you know, they're a channel for you to become, you know, famous and whatnot. But I'm just saying, maybe not. So, and it can be for, I mean, this system is used for a lot of other things, but that's one simple way of getting people to content to them. You can track how much they consumed. Varies. So right now I pay, okay, I gotta share my screen. I pay $39 a month and I get up to 1,000 minutes. So, and then it's a sliding scale based upon, it's just all in minutes, all in consumption. So, you know, yeah, paying $35 whether I use my 1,000 minutes or not, but you know, I have up to 1,000 minutes that comes with that package. And there's lots of IVRs that are out there that do very similar things. That, I think on average, if you're using like 0.01 cent is probably an average cost when you're pushing content out like that or using some kind of phone-based IVR system. So it's fairly inexpensive, even though you're paying for it. It's not going to break the bank. The listeners' minutes. Yeah, so I have hundreds of hours of content just sitting there. If I'm not listening to it or doing anything with it, there's no charge. Okay, hold on, I'm not sharing again. Oops. Okay. And just one last. That's it. Worth the wait. So yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. The slides will be available. I don't know if they're online that have questions. I don't know if I can access that from here.
Questions?
So I'm sorry, I didn't understand what is trackable podcasting list? What was that list? Trackable podcasting?
So that's the whole thing I just talked about, the phone potting. So you can track that somebody's consumed your content.
So that's a list of people that used your system, or
no. This is a way to track, who's actually listened to the content, how many minutes they've listened to, how much they've actually consumed. So you can only do it through this type of device. some feedback there.
That shows.
This is just the names of all the different content I have. Yeah. So this is the titles of the content I've uploaded. Yes. Right. But you can't do that with a standard RSS podcast. This is using phone-based technology to push audio content to your listener. So it's not technically a podcast, but it's another way of pushing out your content that's trackable and accountable.
What does servo mean? Servo name?
It's an old name they used. That's just their name they called this type of content.
Like a service?
Like a survey. I think they originally used it for phone surveys and they called it servo instead.
People on WebEx, you're unmuted now.
Over here.
Are you familiar with app software Anchor?
No.
So I just found them. They you create your podcast on there and it puts it out to Spotify and Apple without any of the RSS stuff.
They background because there's no other way to do that.
I didn't have to do it.
Yeah.
So,
so you get to pick your meta tagging, or do you get to pick what you want on them?
I just found it today.
Oh, okay. Well, I will do my homework on that.
Thought you might have a thought on it.
Yeah. I'll look it up.
So interviews seem like a perfect format for podcasts. Have you come across formats or people that maybe shouldn't do podcasts? It seems like maybe at first they should, like maybe a school principal, or you think a videographer, maybe, since it's a very visual art, maybe isn't suited for a podcast.
You definitely want to make sure they're not like you can't edit that you certainly. That's why I always have a phone call with any before I ask them through email or through LinkedIn. Hey, I think you'd be a great guest. I always have a phone call with them first, because if for some reason they just are a horrible speaker, or they have a speech impediment that, probably wouldn't go over too well, unfortunately. But yeah, I always make sure I interview them on the phone first.
On that point about interviews, is there any recommended or maximum number of participants? Can you do a panel? What's the limit on how many people you can have that would come across verbally on the audio?
I would say no more than 3 at the most, and also you want to have them identify themselves as they're speaking too, because there's no visuals to go with that. So you might say, oh, so-and-so here, I'd like to answer that question, or I'm going to ask a question of so-and-so. When I'm doing it, so I'm using Blog Talk Radio, and it's a 30-minute. Coach them ahead of time to say, okay, I'm watching my clock. I have a little clock that tells me what time it is. I'm going to say for my last question, so that they know, oh, I'm out of time. So I'm not going to answer a very long-winded question. So you have to decide if it's a panel, maybe set time limits for their responses, because if somebody goes on and on and on and on, the other poor schleps don't get an answer. They're, you get to show what an expert they are.
You're going to want to get them to mute when they're not talking, try not to talk over each other.
Mm-hmm.
The more people you have, too, the more difficult.
Right.
So you're going to want to start small.
Mm-hmm. Right. I agree.
What about with that free conference call or Zoom? You can mute everyone and then mute them yourself, right?
Yeah.
You could do that.
And you can do that on Blog Talk Radio too.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just had a question, what percentage of people who do podcasts are actually doing it themselves, and what percentage actually, in your experience, has consultants or other people who do all the formatting and creation?
Well, the most popular ones are obviously professionally produced, but I would say there's a lot themselves. And as you can see, there's software that allows you to do it fairly easily. I would say if you're not confident in producing the content, editing the content, then I would get somebody else involved. Maybe the schools would have students that would volunteer to do that too.
What are you seeing with regard to privacy concerns with underage children or others generating podcasts or whatever? Because I see a lot of the younger youth using like Instagram or some of these other messaging contents and information. I'm wondering, how does this?
The parents better get involved, because I see a lot of popular kids out now doing YouTube shows, and they're opening the reveal gifts and stuff like that, and they're becoming these crazy over the superstars. You'd certainly want to have parental guidance, parental involvement as much as possible.
I was wondering about the phone. If I'm going to call people's phone numbers, do you somehow I think about I can't just email you without having you sign up for my email list and give permissions. Are there some sort of permissions that are going along with that?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to give you my phone number
Right.
if then you're going to send me a zillion million things.
Right. No, I would certainly put a disclaimer in there that it's like your email, we don't share your phone number, we delete it after you've listened to it or whatever. I mean, it's still in your record. You'll have access to it in your reports. So I would never use that format unless it's been internally communicated that you're getting content this way, or full volunteer to do that on a volunteer basis. Yeah, I mean, obviously you're going to have.
So if they were going to sign up for my newsletter, I could actually put something in there that said something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, it's a push content to people. We've all, we're attached to the hip with these things 24/7. Does anybody have a favorite podcast show they would just want to shout out? Oh, yes. I like that.
Wait. And Wait has more than one person in it,
Yeah.
and they handle it pretty well.
But they do it, or they have so they have
Yep.
the call-in person, the quizzes, the anecdotes, all those. Yeah. So there is a format to it. So that's why content up, after is very helpful. Yeah. Or see them live. I've done that. Yes. No, I agree. That's one of my favorites.
Go ahead.
I like better podcasting.
Yeah.
It's good advertising.
Right.
You're not going to. Sorry, none of us are going to make any money.
No.
It's a hobby. And, that particular better podcast.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that one. Yeah. Anybody else?
A very timely one on right at the moment. BBC is putting on one called 13 Minutes to Moon, which is been a very, very good series.
Oh, that would be good.
It's obviously a finite. In fact, I think they're doing 13 episodes.
And that's it.
But,
yeah.
And then that's going to be it. But very good.
Good to know. Anybody on the webcast? I don't know if they're still on.
I'm curious about marketing. So you mentioned that you are you're interviewing people so that you can then take advantage of their audience.
Yeah, exactly.
How else do you market a podcast?
Social media. That's obviously, a no-brainer. I speak at conferences, talk about it. Just basically email blasts. Drive. That's probably the most popular way that I drive traffic to the podcast. Have other people promote it for you, cross-reference it. So the people that I interview, I actually send them the MP3 file or the link to the podcast page, and they're posting that on their page, so I can tell when I'm getting traffic from those other sites. It's quite frankly, they're flattered by it. I'm a nobody right now, so I call them out of the blue or send them a message and said, hey, I really like your profile. I think you'd be a great guest on my show. Who wouldn't be flattered by that? So I'm not bashful. Just reach out to somebody and you'd be surprised. And a lot of these people, I probably have it as a guest again. They had a lot of fun. They enjoyed the live audience. So have fun with it. I mean, that's the whole point. I mean, there's no cost. What's the worst that's going to happen? Somebody hears and they didn't like the content. Oh, well, sorry.
I'm curious about your bigger picture. You said you're using the podcast to drive traffic to your website.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really your website that is your business? Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I mean, that's where people learn about what the business does.
So the social media that's aiming people at podcasts is just, it's almost like the teaser to get them to your.
Yeah. I'll say like, hey, learn about how to recruit and retain your top executives in a call center, which is a big problem. Or listen to what technologies you should stay away from in a call center. And so the link drives them right to the page. So through different social media channels or the people I've interviewed promote their show, or I'll promote content from them, or they have a book, a lot of them have books, or they have white papers they want to talk about. So by me kind of collectively cross sharing things, then it's going to.
Just in case you're curious what this is not our normal stage setup. I have really no idea. David, explain to us what it is, or
I can explain, but I think actually maybe Mike ought to use our.
So actually, if many of you know, we actually do a number of STEM activities throughout the Naperville area. And a lot of it goes back to things and technologies that we're doing here at Nokia. But we have a 8-week program here on this campus for summer interns that we hire. They're usually freshmen and sophomores from colleges. They're actually here to do a job. But one of the things we teach them real-time software programming. They're actually programming an Arduino Uno-based robot, and it's actually a parallax bobot, if people know what that is. But we actually develop a lot of the functional software for them. They basically are doing a logical exercise. They're just moving. It's all written in C, but they have to move the functions and such, and they compete on these floors that you see through mazes, and it's like opening doors that they don't know about before they get on the platform. But they have 4 contests, and then we'll score them, and they'll receive awards tomorrow as each of the teams compete. But it's basically how to work together, and we want to observe how well they function as a team as well as learning technology.
That's awesome.
So before you all came in, we just kicked out these students who were busy here trying to get ready for tomorrow's big event. So tomorrow this will be campus activity.
That's great. Great.
So just so in closing, thank you so much, Nancy. Always just a great topic. And really cool topic for August is August 21st. Same time, same place. We'll have Rick Poole, who he's a mountaineer who climbed Mount Everest in the May climb, and he's going to come and talk to us along with our own David Zahn from Nokia, who's also a mountaineer, and they're going to talk to us about both the actual climb as well as some of the advances for material and weather tech that are enabling these climbers to have safer climbs and actually more opportunities to climb. So that is what August 21st is all about. So tell everyone, because I think Rick Poole's going to he's got some great photos, and it's going to be really nifty. So, and I think that's it. Thank you so much.